Inside Qing City High School, a student named Yuki was announced to have 0 awakening value. Hearing this left Yuki stunned and unable to move. The boys nearby began whispering he was abandoned by God, while the girls also questioned why someone like him was studying at their school. Suddenly, the dean said Yuki was fated not to awaken, and he had to protect the school's reputation. So he harshly ordered Yuki to drop out, and this left Yuki even more shocked. He then argued that no rule required students with low awakening values to drop out. But before he could say more, a rock struck his head. He hurriedly turned around and began asking who did it, but he only saw bullies ordering him to leave because he would bring misfortune. Soon, other students began surrounding him and demanding his expulsion. Yet amid the chaos, a voice called for everyone to stop, and it was a student named Lily. She also reprimanded them for being heartless to someone who had studied with them. Still, the bullies tried to persuade her to avoid Yuki since she might fail to awaken too. However, Lily ignored their threats and approached Yuki. She also urged him not to give up since the test might be wrong and awakening value was only a guide. After all, history showed high values failed while low values were blessed, but Yuki said he did not trust gods. 3,000 years ago, monsters appeared and humanity tried to use nuclear weapons on them, but they survived and grew stronger. Among all those monsters, 4 beast kings were born. Human territory was quickly conquered under their leadership and civilization neared extinction. But at the height of despair, 2 divine statues descended from the sky. From then on, humans prayed to statues where high values gained blessings while low values stayed ordinary. Those with 10 or less were called abandoned by God, so Yuki sighed that humanity still relied on gods except for him. He then proceeded to summon his system to check some information. As he looked at Lily, he realized that though he lacked awakening, he had a system. He then attempted to check Lily's details, yet her level was locked beyond his authority. Nevertheless, he understood he was a transmigrant with a system and would level up by killing monsters. With that resolve, he left the school, vowing that on awakening day in 100 days, he would astonish them. Since he also believed strength lay not in the gods but in his system, he summoned it to reveal his status. He then finally saw that all his attributes were still at level 1. But as he examined it, he found that he could grow stronger easily by killing monsters, unlike ordinary people stuck by weak talent. So from this day onward, he vowed to begin grinding. He then raised his hand and pointed toward the ground while declaring that he would start there. But his fingers were actually aimed at the ants crawling below. One ant noticed this and began to find him weird. Suddenly, the system warned ants had no levels, and killing one gave him only 0.1 EXP. Hence, the system advised efficiency, and he admitted slaying them one by one wasted time. Fortunately, he always carried insecticide with him. He then sprayed the ants and gained 0.1 EXP as they died. While he was mercilessly exterminating them, an old man and a child watched from behind. Seeing this, the child asked if the ants would retaliate, and the grandfather told him not to learn such behavior. Meanwhile, Yuki abruptly stopped when he heard a notification from the system. The system said he had slain 100 ants and unlocked a mission to kill 10,000 for ants' great strength. Upon discovering that there was a skill book as a reward, he hurriedly accepted the mission. However, an hour later, he had to admit that killing ants was not only time-consuming but also exhausting. Unexpectedly, the system congratulated him for reaching level 2 and gave him 2 attribute points. He then quickly checked his status window and considered where to allocate them. But since the reward was ants' great strength, he reasoned it must boost strength, so he decided to add both points to that attribute. Soon after, he felt a surge of energy coursing through his body as his strength rose to level 3. After that, he resumed exterminating ants while the old man reminded the child to avoid people like Yuki. After endless spraying, the system finally reported 10,000 ants slain. He was then amazed the mission had ended and quickly looked at the prize he had gained. He gained the title Ants' Public Enemy, so ants would attack him yet lose half their strength. He then examined Ants' great strength and saw it boosted his power tenfold for 3 minutes with a 2-hour cooldown. But he felt excitement picturing the skill turning battles against mighty opponents in his favor. Satisfied that his efforts had not been wasted, he decided to learn the skill. When he touched the screen, a surge of energy flowed from it and entered his body. He felt the power transferring into him as he closed his eyes. After a moment, he opened them and realized the process was already complete. He then set that aside and chose to test the skill on a nearby tree. He took a fighting stance and gathered all his strength into his body. Raising his fist, he delivered a powerful punch. The force was overwhelming that the tree was sent flying. When it was over, all that remained was the broken trunk. He then looked at his fist and was certain a punch like that would overwhelm even Mike Tyson. The next day at school, Yuki found himself being targeted with a rock once again. However, before it could strike his head, he swiftly dodged and caught it with his bare hand. He then turned around angrily to see who had thrown it. The nearby bully scoffed and warned Yuki to leave or the next stone would hit. When Yuki remained unmoved, they demanded to know whether he truly intended to stay. To their surprise, he slowly raised the rock in his. Then he crushed it effortlessly with his bare fingers, which left the bullies stunned. He also dropped his bag to the ground and rushed toward one of the bullies. Without hesitation, he drove his fist into the bully's stomach with immense force. The bully's expression twisted in shock and pain. Even then, he refused to believe Yuki had such strength since he was abandoned by God. Yuki then calmly stated that he had held back and told them to remember his words. He declared that he would first become an awakener. The second one is that he would not show mercy the next time they provoked him. With that being said, he proceeds to challenge anyone dissatisfied to step forward. Yet the bullies quickly fled while Yuki picked up his bag. As he muttered that they were cowards, Lily had witnessed everything. She was stunned that someone abandoned by God held such strength before awakening. Later during class, Yuki listens to the teacher instructing everyone to pay attention. He told them Qing City was plagued by the Faceless Man and pressed them to stay alert. He also warned them not to go alone until law enforcement eliminated the threat. Hearing this, Yuki recalled the Faceless Man is a D-rank giant of cement that killed those who stared. In addition to that, the teacher stressed its sluggishness but warned they must report it at once, and the students complied. Yuki, however, realized danger was rising, and he must get stronger by other means. Later that night at home, he took out a knife and he began slaughtering white chickens, which gained him 1 EXP from each. As he held one in his hand, he realized he lacked the money to keep buying them. Suddenly, the system told him he unlocked space inventory after killing combat creatures. In addition, the system store had also been unlocked. And lastly, he activated the gold trade system, which displayed a trade ratio of 1 to 100. Upon seeing this, he saw the system revealed more with each kill and quickly traded gold for cash. In an instant, 1 gold coin was converted into cash. As he stared at the money, he saw that only powerful creatures yielded enough EXP and gold to turn into cash. With this in mind, he decided to buy more white chickens as his next step towards strength. The next day at the market, he handed over his money and declared he would buy every chicken. The owner, who had been about to slaughter one, immediately stopped upon seeing the cash. Yuki then happily took the chickens and left. He walked into a deserted alley. Then he drew out his knife and targeted the chickens next. Before long, he gained multiple points of 1 EXP from each kill. The system soon congratulated him for leveling up to level 3 and rewarded him with 2 attribute points. Though satisfied, he realized killing chickens gave little growth now. But his thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind him. He then instinctively turned around holding a knife and a dead chicken. To his surprise, a little girl stood there staring at him. His appearance quickly frightened her and caused her to cry. She then proceeds to run away, calling for her mother and accusing him of being a pervert. Yuki was obviously confused by this, but the girl's mother appeared gripping a broom and demanding to know who had bullied her daughter. He then hurriedly tried to explain that it was all a misunderstanding, but the mother's anger only intensified. She raised the broom and struck him repeatedly, leaving him screaming in fear. In the end, he lay battered on the ground and realized public chicken slaughter was risky and he needed another method. Suddenly, he overheard 2 men say workers had quit again at Quinn's slaughterhouse. One added that it's because the butcher was hurt, but business thrived even with fewer workers. Hearing this made Yuki wonder why he had not thought of the slaughterhouse earlier. He then proceeded to show himself to the 2 men, but he was still holding his knife as he asked if he could inquire about something. His appearance startled them and they screamed in panic. The 2 also ended up running away while shouting that there was a ghost. Seeing this, he tossed the knife aside and clarified he just wanted to ask if the slaughterhouse needed worker. Later at the slaughterhouse, Yuki submitted his CV to apply for the job. As the boss reviewed it, he recalled hearing the former butcher resign after hurting his hand. But the boss replied that his establishment was only a small business. Yuki then quickly explained he wanted no salary and only a business deal. At the mention of this, the boss immediately thinks of money. Yuki continued by saying that he'd purchased livestock in bulk to prepare for awakening. Still, the boss questioned how he could possibly eat that much himself. He then said he had many classmates and promised no cent would be wasted. However, he also had one request. The boss became curious and asked what it was. Hence, he stated that he wanted to personally handle the slaughtering in order to train his courage. Soon after, he began slaughtering chickens and gained 1 EXP from each. He also felt satisfied after seeing this as an efficient way to level up. Moreover, he recalled that larger animals would likely provide even more EXP, so his gaze shifted toward a cow that was quietly eating nearby. He smiled faintly at it and reasoned it's both his duty and his path to power. But the cow sensed something unusual, and it suddenly leaped away. Seeing it attempting to escape, Yuki was momentarily surprised, yet he quickly reminded it that it will still get killed by him. So he proceeded to give chase with his knife in hand and urged it to stop. The cow successfully rushed toward the exit, but it noticed something wrong and abruptly halted. Upon looking up, it noticed the high surrounding walls and began to sweat nervously. Yuki saw this and declared that it could no longer run. He then swiftly closed the distance by jumping forward, and with a decisive motion of his knife, he ended its life. The cow then soon collapsed lifelessly to the ground, while Yuki stood over it and muttered that even a mere cow dared to resist his resolve. But the thought of how effective this method was made him laugh in excitement. Suddenly, the system notified him of 30 EXP and cow data, which confirmed tougher creatures advanced him quickly. Just then, the boss came and marveled bitterly that Yuki seemed made for butchery. However, Yuki's expression suddenly shifted when he heard a growling sound nearby. He turned to the boss to know what it was, and he was told it was a beast, which the boss also revealed that it was a single-eyed wolf. Hearing this made Yuki grow excited for the beast's presence and asked to see it. Afterward, the boss led him to the beast's cage. Yuki then finally saw the level 10 one-eyed wolf with 120 combat ability. He also felt its power despite injury, and the system confirmed its speed meant his victim could never flee. Seeing Yuki's tension, the boss explained his relatives had captured it and its meat sold high for nutrients. Yuki heard this and quickly realized killing it would yield significant EXP. So he told the boss a classmate wanted to buy the beast for Awakening Day and asked its price. The boss then replied that it would cost at least 50,000. Yuki began to sweat hearing this since he did not have that much money. However, if he killed the wolf himself, he'd gain EXP and gold to convert into cash. So he suggested to the boss that fighting it could help him train his courage, but the boss warned him against reckless ideas since the beast was deadly. Yet Yuki merely smiled and assured him that he had prepared for such a situation. After all, his pig killer sword, which carried 10 points of attack power, was his trump card. And with the addition of his skills, he was confident he could defeat the wolf and level up. At that moment, the wolf began to grow restless and violently tugged at its chain. With a sudden burst of strength, it broke free and lunged toward Yuki. However, Yuki believed the timing was perfect, so he swiftly activated his great strength skill. Watching this unfold, the alarmed boss shouted for him to be careful, but the wolf already charged fiercely, and Yuki met it head-on. He successfully drove his knife deep into the beast's body and forced it to collapse onto the ground. After this success, Yuki turned toward the boss and remarked that he seemed to be braver than expected. The boss gazed at the fallen wolf and was bewildered that Yuki had slain it with a mere blade. Impressed, the boss called him a natural butcher and consented to let him work part-time. The system also told Yuki he leveled up twice and gained 5 points, which pleased him. In addition, he obtained a piece of equipment known as the Wolf Claw. It granted 50 attack points, but required level 10 to use. Realizing that he was only level 5, he understood that he would not be able to equip it for now. Suddenly, the boss stressed the wolf now belonged to him and finalized the 50,000 deal. Yuki paid quickly and asked to be notified of future beast captures, to which the boss agreed. The next day at school, Yuki casually imagined how grand his meal would be with the entire wolf. Suddenly, the teacher talks about martial artists and pharmacists. He said they exist to support awakeners, where martial artists were responsible for combat, while pharmacists specialized in healing. However, Yuki's mind drifted to the store's equipment that he couldn't afford, so he felt trapped knowing only by slaying beasts as a butcher could he earn cash and EXP. But suddenly, someone tapped his shoulder, causing him to turn around quickly. He was startled as Lily pressed him to write and insisting the lesson mattered for awakeners. In response, he confidently assured her that he would definitely awaken. However, Lily wondered where his confidence came from. At that moment, a piece of chalk flew across the room and struck his forehead. The teacher then sternly ordered him to stop talking during class. After some time, the lesson finally ended, and Yuki walked out alone, but Lily watched his retreating figure with a complicated expression. Remembering his distracted state, she felt obliged to support him as class rep. So later that afternoon, she decided to follow him on his way home. She saw him walking cheerfully and wondered if she had overthought his situation. After a while, he reached his destination. She noticed the establishment and felt a sense of suspicion. Nevertheless, she approached it and pushed the door open. As the door slowly opened, she felt a wave of nervousness. The sight before her caused her eyes to widen in shock, and she fainted on the spot after witnessing it. Not long after, she slowly regained consciousness. As her vision cleared, she noticed a human figure standing nearby, but her face suddenly flushed red as she felt a hand pressing against the front of her chest. Startled and embarrassed, she immediately slapped Yuki and called him a pervert. The force of her strikes sent him stumbling to the ground as he quickly explained that it was just him. Once she realized it, she angrily demanded to know what he had been trying to do. Yuki retorted angrily that she had interrupted his pig slaughter and drenched him in blood. Hearing this, she finally noticed the dead pig lying nearby. He then went on to explain he was just startled by her fainting and pressed her chest to help her breathe. But his words only made her blush more, and she urged him to stop since no one foresaw him butchering a pig. With that being said, she asked why he had come there to slaughter a pig. Yuki explained his poverty forced him into part-time butchery, then gently asked why she followed. She tried to answer but stopped after realizing she can't admit she was worried. So she spoke of the school museum trip and urged him to come. Hearing this, he reflected on his time in this world and knew he must learn its history. He then patted his chest and assured her that he would definitely go. She was satisfied by this and turned to leave. But before stepping out, she gave him a stern look and warned him not to mention what had happened that day. In response, he nervously agreed. She then hurriedly shut the door with force, leaving him momentarily stunned. After walking a short distance, she suddenly stopped and crouched down after realizing how embarrassing her actions had been. The next day, inside the bus, the teacher explained the museum visit would cover Beast's origins and Awakener's history. Upon hearing this, the students praised the Pope and the martial goddess for saving humanity. Lily also nodded in agreement, and Yuki noticed her expression. So he curiously asked whether she admired the female martial goddess. In response, she readily admitted that she did. She also said she aspired to be like the goddess, able to slay beasts and protect humanity. This made him wonder about her grasp of gods, and she explained they left traces like empowering humans as awakeners. After hearing her, he said he had a question and noted countless god statues had appeared worldwide. And although the 9 cities were vast, their own city was the only one without a statue. Lily replied firmly that true study would have spared him from asking foolishly. Still, she explained the first 2 statues came down ages ago and many followed. Except for one unchanged statue, all others created awakeners, but she admitted she didn't know why their vast city had no statue, which earned the name Land Abandoned by God. Shocked by this, Yuki felt the world's reality was too unlike his previous and was strange, but his thoughts broke off when the teacher announced their arrival at the museum. Once inside, the teacher ordered silence and strict attention to the exhibits. As they walked through the displays, Lily gazed at the martial goddess with admiration. Yuki then remarked it was rare to see the comm class rep admire someone so deeply. In response, she insisted the goddess stood apart, making the Beast King sign a truce with the Pope. But the atmosphere suddenly turned tense when someone appeared behind them. Yuki immediately sensed an ominous aura, so he pulled Lily closer, but she warned him not to act in ways that might cause misunderstanding. Regardless, he ignored her protest and shielded her while urging her to be cautious. He also told her that the mysterious figure gave him an uneasy feeling. The others nearby soon noticed the tall individual who stood motionless. The figure remained still until its cloak slipped off. Then it revealed a grotesque body without a face. Seeing this, Lily trembled as she recognized it as a faceless man. The creature immediately let out a piercing screech that startled everyone. It even began rampaging through the museum. So Yuki lifted Lily while muttering that the faceless man's gaping mouth was still a feature. Panic also spread as students struggled to understand how a beast had emerged within the museum. Meanwhile, Yuki led Lily to safety and told her to help teacher will evacuate while he faced the beast. However, she thought he had lost his mind since he was no match for a faceless man. Nevertheless, he assured her that he could handle it. Suddenly, teacher will arrived urging Lily to, but she explained Yuki was still inside. Yet when the teacher asked where he was, she realized that he had already disappeared. Meanwhile, Yuki, who's now level 5, confidently charged toward the beast. He then saw the faceless man gripping a student. So he first checked the creature's status and found it level 7 with low intelligence but high defense. He found himself faster and more skilled, so he's confident it would not be hard. Hence, he proceeded to circle around the beast to distract it. Then he landed nearby and confused it even more. After it, he deliberately drew its attention and silently planned to lure it away so the remaining people could escape. At that moment, the beast noticed him and let out a loud scream. It then hurled a piece of rock toward him. Seeing this, Yuki was shocked by its speed, but he barely managed to dodge in time as the rock smashed into the wall instead. He also began to wonder how it could use long-range attacks when it was supposed to lack intelligence. And as he looked at the wall's gaping hole, he muttered in awe at the beast's sheer force. But at that moment, he suddenly realized that the room behind it was the girls' restroom. He was immediately accused of being a pervert, so he explained it wasn't intentional. Moving on, he turned his attention back to the beast. He saw it lift a larger floor piece and realized he could no longer hide his strength. So as the massive rock flew toward him, he finally activated his great strength. The skill surged into his fist with immense power, and with a single punch he shattered the rock into pieces. Then it all scattered past him. After that, he raised his fist again and drove it into the beast's face with overwhelming force. The impact sent the creature flying, and it ended up hitting a nearby wall. Before it weakly dropped to the ground, Yuki then watched as the wall slowly crumbled over its body. Then he began to wonder if it was finally dead. However, the beast soon rose from the debris. Yuki had already expected this, knowing he had to break through its high defense to win. Hence, he immediately ordered the system to open the store to purchase a weapon. The system then displayed the available items. Azure Sword cost 200 gold for 50 attacks at level 10, but Eternal Sword gave 60 attacks for 500. Blocked by the level requirement, he grabbed the weapon without limits. At the same time, he began to look around his surroundings. And after making sure no one will find out his secret, he purchased the Eternal Sword. Upon acquiring it, he raised the blade and unleashed an eternal slash at the beast. The creature tried to retaliate, but Yuki swiftly moved and struck it with immense power. This time, he sensed that its defense had finally broken, so he immediately activated great strength once more. Then he delivered a crushing blow with his fist. The beast's body quickly shattered and exploded into fragments, while its remains scattered through the air before falling to the ground. At that moment, Lily's voice echoed throughout the museum as she called for Yuki. She soon arrived with the authorities and asked where the faceless man was. In response, Yuki calmly told her that it was now everywhere in the exhibition hall. Suddenly, the system notified him that he had reached level 6 and ordinary beasts were no longer enough. But soon after, the authorities asked him whether he had defeated the beast alone. He replied casually that it had not been difficult. Hearing this, the officer told him to return to school while they investigated the scene. But as Yuki left, he muttered that even unawakened, his power rivaled the martial artists. Later back at school, Principal Jin proudly announced their student had faced a faceless man alone. Yuki still clarified he was only slightly stronger. However, someone noted that bare hands alone couldn't destroy a faceless man. The principal then introduced Yuki to the law enforcement 3rd team leader, and the man seated before them was team leader Shane. Seeing Shane's serious look, Jin warned him not to scare Yuki, who's their school's hope, but Shane insisted his duty as an officer was to understand what was happening. Knowing that, Yuki shared that the faceless man had been acting strangely. This immediately caught Shane's interest and asked about it. So Yuki elaborated that a faceless man usually moved alone, yet this one had appeared in a crowded museum. Upon hearing this, Shane stood up and asked if there was anything else. Yuki continued explaining that the beast moved through the hall as if searching. Shane quickly sighed after hearing this and thanked him for his cooperation. When Shane extended his hand, Yuki accepted the handshake modestly. However, he soon widened his eyes in surprise at the strength of Shane's grip. He also realized that he was likely testing his power, so Yuki tightened his grip in return to also check his. At the same time, Shane saw Yuki's steady face and wondered if he had natural strength or a secret. Meanwhile, Yuki was struck by Shane's awakened force far beyond that of any ordinary man, but their conversation broke off as Shane's colleague hurried in seeking him. Shane then quickly turned to the man to ask what it was. In response, the man reported that there's documents requiring his immediate attention. Shane then quickly released Yuki's hand upon knowing this. Following this, he urged Yuki to leave, and Yuki was somewhat irritated by this. After Yuki departed, Shane began reviewing the documents and was visibly surprised. Because of this, he could not help but inform the others that trouble was about to come. Later that evening, Yuki prepared a feast for himself. When he was gazing at the meal, he felt hot pot was one of life's happiest moments, especially when it included ferocious beast meat, and he quickly placed a slice into his mouth. His expression then immediately lit up with excitement since the meat was expensive for a reason, but the system's sudden notice revealed his food had boosted strength and defense. Upon learning this, he continued eating enthusiastically and steadily gaining more points. With that being said, he decided to check what he gained today and went into his room. When he opened his inventory, he was stunned by what he saw. The small potion recovers 100 health in 5 minutes, while the large potion restores it instantly. He saw they boosted his endurance, though he did not understand their effects. So he decided to use the small potion first to test it. Almost immediately, he felt a warm current stirring within his body. However, his focus was broken when he heard a sound outside. He then cautiously approached the door and peered through the gap. There, he saw someone sitting at his dining table. And without hesitation, he kicks the person while demanding to know their identity and purpose. But his fierce expression vanished the next second when he recognized the person. Before his attack could land, he realized it was Lily. At the same time, Lily saw his actions and became furious. She slapped him without hesitation and scolded him harshly. After that, he said he had not expected her and asked why she had not knocked. She kept eating and said he never locked the door and the beast meat was too tempting. So she asked where he got the meat and he said he bought it from the slaughterhouse. Setting that aside, he asked why she had come to see him. Lily then put down her food and grew serious. She said her visit was about the faceless man because when he destroyed it, she saw a green light stop. This led her to suspect the beast was not alone but controlled. Her words then made him wonder if the faceless man had truly been controlled. She confirmed her suspicion by citing Beast Code 359, which could control others. However, she soon realized that he was barely listening and was more focused on eating. So she shouted at him to pay attention, but he replied everything is fine now. This prompted her to ask what he meant by it. He said he understood her concern, but the authorities should be investigating. He added law enforcement arrived quickly with their leader, which showed the situation was not simple. But he wondered why the faceless man risked appearing in the museum. Hearing this, Lily suddenly seemed to recall something. She murmured that it might be related to that incident. Yuki was confused by this and asked what she meant. She then explained it was tied to the Qing Museum with its tragic history. A long time ago, a weak lizard lost its tail to misfortune. When it crawled to the lake, it was shocked to see its body had turned black. Over time, its body grew larger and the neighbors became its prey. It gained intelligence and power, while its black fog made all creatures tremble. After thousands of years of fighting, it became the beast king of that region. Yet it longed to grow stronger and sensed a far greater aura in the distance. Drawn by that presence, it went to the city and believed devouring humans would make it stronger. It rose to be a beast king, but then the Pope acted. The beast king was defeated when the Pope set an array and sealed its corpse beneath the city. Qing City was later built upon that very battlefield wasteland. After hearing this story, Yuki wondered if the recent incident was tied to the fallen beast king. Lily replied there wasn't enough information, but the leader's presence proved it was serious. Yuki then grows frustrated since he is already facing threats tied to the boss. Suddenly, Lily decided to leave while thanking him for clearing her doubts and for the meal. She also reminded him to be careful in the future, and he decided to accompany her out. The next day at school, Teacher Will said the faceless man was gone, so there's no need to panic. However, a student asked if 13 faceless men were really caught, which drew Yuki's attention. Will confirmed the faceless men were active and told everyone to stay home, but Yuki realized the infected beasts were increasing, though still manageable. Even so, Yuki knew he couldn't leave everything to the leader and he'd need greater strength. Suddenly, Will announced that the Jiang envoy would visit tomorrow and everyone must perform well. The news instantly excited the girls who felt fortunate to witness the envoy in person. Meanwhile, the boys were astonished that their high school had gained such prominence. Yet Lily thought the situation was serious since Envoy Shan ranked top 3 in China. Hearing this made Yuki feel uneasy as well, but the system interrupted him and informed him he could change profession at level 10. He thought level 10 meant a big boost, but livestock gave too little experience, so he needed another way. Later, after class ended, he received a phone call, but some students mocked him for his unfashionable ringtone. He then decided to ignore them and answered the call. On the other end, the boss informed him that he had acquired a rare beast. Yuki immediately asked what kind it was upon hearing this. The boss replied that it was a 3-headed griffin, which is an extremely rare creature. Yuki quickly recalled that it was high-ranked and asked where it had come from. The boss said a friend caught 3, then priced a male at 800,000 and a female at 500,000. Yuki agreed at once, and the boss reminded him to bring the money when he came. After ending the call, he felt frustrated since he would still be short by 500,000. But before he could think further, someone grabbed his shoulder. He turned and saw Lily, who quickly asked when he would stop being distracted. He admitted he was short on money and asked for a job, to which she asked if he's really in need. In response, he nodded repeatedly after thinking she told him he could help her with something and she would transfer the payment. But he was surprised to learn she was wealthy since she had never shown it before. Nevertheless, he quickly assured her that he would complete her task no matter what it was. He also suggested doing other stuff that made him embarrassed. Lily noticed his expression and warned him since she was not interested in him. However, he clarified he only meant helping her with troublesome people and asked what she assumed. Lily then quickly shifted the topic to his task and stated that he would accompany her for the entire day tomorrow, but he was left confused by her request. The next day at the museum, 2 towering statues stood before them. Lily took her time offering a sincere prayer. Meanwhile, Yuki recalled that these were the most revered gods, Jehovah and Zeus. He also glanced at Lily while remembering how without them, the earth might have become a haven for beasts. Still, he wondered if she had really spent such a large sum just to make him join a prayer session. Lily then said prayer class raised awakening chances, but he kept skipping it. She also thought if he awakened, she might share in the good fortune and raise her own chances too. But Yuki thought spending 500,000 for a slight luck boost was only reasonable for the wealthy. Yet when he looked around, he noticed a nearby portrait of a girl praying devoutly before it, so he asked whether praying to a portrait could truly work. Lily explained primal gems were rare, so most prayed to statues and portraits instead. But he said he did not know what primal gems were, so she scolded him for skipping classes. She then explained, primal gems were stones from God statues, and statues made from them could bless believers. So praying before ordinary statues or portraits could raise one's chances of awakening. However, Yuki didn't believe in gods and only wanted to level up and grow stronger. Yet, he also found it strange that China had no gods in this world. So he asked Lily whether she had ever heard of any legends about Chinese gods. She replied that China was seen as a land abandoned by the gods with no divine legends left. This answer only deepened his doubts since every civilization had legends tied to its land. So he speculated gods had once existed, but their legends were lost or erased. And since he had come as a Chinese, he felt responsible for uncovering the land's truth. With that thought in mind, he excused himself to attend to something. Lily noticed he no longer intended to pray and reminded him that awakening was never easy. In response, he assured her that he would surpass the gods even if he failed to awaken. But his bold declaration left her confused, and she concluded he's crazy. Meanwhile, Yuki already stepped outside, already thinking it was time to further enhance his strength. Later at the slaughterhouse, the cages were covered with talismans. Inside were a level 20 male, 3-headed griffin, and a level 17 female griffins. When the boss showed the beast to Yuki, he asked what Yuki thought. Yuki then marveled at their overwhelming presence with battle power exceeding 1,000. Setting aside his amazement, he asked about the 3rd griffin the boss had mentioned. After explaining the last griffin would be delivered later by his friends, he discussed the payment. So Yuki promised to transfer the money, but also asked to meet the hunting team. The boss looked puzzled and asked why he wanted to meet them. He then replied that he might need their assistance in the future to hunt beasts. He even vowed to slay beasts and forge a heart of invincibility, but the boss thought he's mad, yet he still agreed and said that the team would arrive later. In the meantime, Yuki carefully observed the griffins. He knew he could not survive with his strength, so he chose to wait for the hunting team and asked the boss to notify him. Later back at home, Yuki was busy showering. When he suddenly heard a loud crash outside, he quickly approached the door, wondering whether someone had entered. But given the recent unrest in the city, he decided to check. Before he could reach it, the door was violently kicked open from the outside. As a result of the immense force, it flew inward. His Ultraman figure ended up tumbling to the ground. And while he turned his attention back to the doorway, the figure began firing at a Godzilla doll. Meanwhile, behind the shattered doorway, a pink-haired girl appeared. She was a member of the hunting team named Yang and asked if he had been looking for them. Angered, Yuki demanded to know who she was calling a pervert and noted she had smashed his door, but she retorted that standing there wrapped only in a towel made him look like one. It was only then that he realized his towel had slipped off. He hurriedly grabbed it and explained that it was all a misunderstanding. However, she showed no interest in listening. She said after that they had brought the final griffin and would wait at the slaughterhouse. Later, inside the secret room, the boss introduced Yuki to the hunting team. A man named Luke stepped forward and introduced himself. Yuki saw him and knew he was truly a hunter as his presence carried an oppressive aura. After that, Luke introduced his daughter Yang to Yuki. Upon hearing this, Yuki silently remarked that she was a violent woman, but his thoughts were cut off when Luke said Boss Quinn told him he wanted to see them. He then explained he needed many ferocious beasts and hoped they could work together. However, Luke asked why he needed much and he said his technique required slaughtering beasts. Hearing this, Luke and the others awkwardly fall silent. After a moment, Luke said Yuki might have been deceived since he had never heard of such a method, while Yang bluntly said Yuki was just a perverted fool with a twisted mind. Hearing this made Yuki point at her and told her to be quiet. Setting that aside, Luke said the griffin were his and asked if he intended to kill one. Yuki admitted he did but lacked the strength, so he asked them to help weaken it. Upon hearing this, Luke agreed without hesitation. He then entered the cage and faced the three-headed female griffin. With determined eyes, he struck it with his bare hand. The immense force sent the massive creature crashing to the ground. However, another griffin stepped forward and let out a deafening roar. Luke was momentarily stunned when he heard a lion's roar emerging from it. The sound even affected Quen and Yang, who quickly covered their ears. But Yang was startled when she noticed Yuki nearby. She saw him stand firm, and she began to wonder if he truly had hidden strength. Meanwhile, Luke proceeded to leap into the air. The griffin noticed this and immediately locked its gaze onto him, but Luke paid no attention and raised his hand. Then he brought it down with tremendous force onto one of the griffin's heads. The impact ended up almost crashing its head, and the creature's body began to collapse weakly to the ground. After confirming that it was on the verge of death, Luke informed Yuki that the rest was up to him. Yuki calmly entered the cage after knowing that, and without further hesitation, he threw a punch at the weakened griffin. However, the system notified him that his power was too low to break through its defense. Yang watched and mocked him by saying he should stop since he was no warrior. However, her words trailed off when she realized what he was actually doing. She saw him relentlessly striking the griffin with a barrage of punches. She then turned to her father and asked if he too could sense Yuki's power growing. Luke fell silent, wondering if Yuki's strength without awakening meant the hereditary technique was real. Meanwhile, Yuki kept hammering the griffin with punches amplified tenfold. He also refused to believe that he could not break through its defense while on it. So he gathered all his strength and he delivered one final strike. When the beast's head exploded, he gained 7,000 experience points and 3,500. His level also rose from 7 to 9, and the system congratulated him on obtaining 21 attribute points. In addition, he gained Lion's Roar that burned half his stamina to triple his power in one roar. Realizing it was an area of effect skill, he knew he'd need to use it carefully in the future. But while he was still reveling in the satisfaction of leveling up, Luke called out to him. He said Yuki had strength but used it poorly, and with training could improve by 20%. So as they leave, he advised him to visit his blacksmith if he truly wanted to grow stronger. Yuki then waved his hand confidently and declared that he would definitely go. Afterward, Yang spoke quietly to her father about Yuki. Luke abruptly paused and confirmed that Yuki's aura had grown stronger after killing the griffin. The next day at home, Yuki was busy swinging his sword repeatedly. However, he complained that dealing with the remains of Griffin was still troublesome. After all, it's huge, but at least its meat would let him boost his attributes for a while. Yet, his thoughts were interrupted by an incoming call. When he answered, Lily immediately scolded him for being absent from class. He then replied by telling her that he had something important to confess. At that moment at school, Lily was stunned by his words, so she hurried out without hesitation to go to him, which left the others confused. Regardless of their stares, she made her way toward Yuki's place as quickly as she could. Later at Yuki's house, the dining table was once again filled with steaming hot pot. Lily arrived while Yuki was eating and asked for some, so he said whoever was slow would get nothing. After finishing the meal, both of them felt completely satisfied. Lily leaned back while remarking she never thought he'd borrow money just to buy a griffin. He admitted it was true, but he hadn't expected her to rush over so quickly just to eat. She then explained that monster meat boosts physical fitness, so skipping class for it wasn't a big deal. But he burst into laughter hearing this, and she demanded to know what was so funny. He replied he'd simply imagine the class rep leading everyone in skipping class. In response, she punched him and forced him to apologize at once. After a moment, she took a drink and casually asked whether he had been following the news. She revealed law enforcement issued a red alert and the envoy had arrived to take charge. Because of this, she feared that Qing City might be facing a major crisis. He quickly agreed with her since he felt uneasy recently and he needed to level up fast. Just then, he saw her take something from her bag and asked what she was doing. She placed a notebook on the table and announced she would give him extra lessons, but he was completely stunned by this. So she explained he couldn't keep visiting places like the museum without knowing basic knowledge. His aggrieved protest echoed throughout the apartment after hearing this. Later that evening, their extra lesson finally ended and she reminded him to keep up the effort. When she mentioned that they would continue in the future, he cried out in surprise, but she only looked at him sternly and asked whether he had a problem. In response, he immediately denied it. With that settled, she prepared to leave and said goodbye. However, he caught up with her and offered to escort her home since he's feeling restless. Hearing this made her blush slightly, but she still replied her home was only 3 streets away and just a 10-minute walk. After confirming, he urged that they leave quickly since it would be more dangerous after dark. The two of them walked down the street. However, she felt walking like this was strangely awkward, so she tried to ease the atmosphere by mentioning that the sunset was beautiful. When she received no response, she turned and asked whether he was listening. Yuki snapped out of his thoughts and asked what she had said, but she felt embarrassed and brushed it off by urging them to hurry. Although he acknowledged her, his gaze instinctively drifted to the side, where he noticed a dark alley emitting a strange aura. Sensing something unusual, he called Lily's attention to it. He suggested she stay at his place for the night since his house had enough room for 2. She turned in surprise and asked what he meant while wondering if she should accept his offer. But before she could respond, a sudden clicking sound echoed through the air. Yuki stiffened when he heard a voice begin counting. Realizing the danger, he quickly pulled Lily back, and this made her ask what was happening. He explained he sensed an unusual presence in the alley and was sure it was a monster. Upon hearing this, she asked whether they should retreat, but he told her there were many other presences up ahead, making things troublesome. So he abruptly stopped and found several wooden figures had already surrounded them. The wooden men continued counting while staring at them with sinister smiles. Recognizing their situation, Yuki understood that they were completely encircled. Suddenly, creatures declared they would punish them for disobeying the rule of not moving. Yuki then discovered each wooden man was level 8 with a combat power of 100. After confirming this, he smiled since it won't be troublesome. But Lily still wondered whether they truly had a way to break through. He remained calm, then replied that retreat was unnecessary since he would deal with them at once. Although she suspected he was merely boasting, he called her over. Then he instructed her to cover her ears as he prepared to use his skill. He activated Lion's Roar with a chance to deafen enemies and shatter their internal organs. The thunderous sound wave instantly forced the wooden men to stagger back. Within moments, their bodies were completely shattered into pieces. Seeing them all scattered, Lily was shocked that Yuki had eliminated them with a single attack. She also could not help but wonder when he had become so powerful. Meanwhile, Yuki saw the remains were inedible, but the experience points were considerable. However, he also dismissed them as useless since modern times had no need for firewood. Suddenly, he noticed something glinting nearby. He saw a bead with a delicate appearance and asked Lily if she recognized it. She then said that if he had listened in class, he would know it was the core of a wooden man. She added the core had strong vitality and could be medicine for awakeners, making it valuable. Upon hearing that it could be sold, he immediately decided to collect them all. Lily casually tossed the bead to him and assured him that she would not compete. He quickly caught it and was unable to hide his satisfaction. However, someone suddenly appeared before them. A law enforcer then asked why they were outside. The officer named Jean also warned that the city was especially dangerous at night, but his gaze fell on the shattered wooden monsters, and he asked if they were responsible. Lily quickly clarified that it was Yuki who had taken them down alone. Jean was surprised to hear this and wondered if Yuki was some kind of monster. Yuki noticed his expression and decided to introduce himself. Upon hearing his name, they realized he was the one who had defeated the faceless man. Jin then praised his surname for producing such talent, though the others thought it exaggerated. Moving on, he introduced himself as captain of the 6th team and said Yuki might become a level 9 powerhouse. Yuki replied that Jin was too kind, but admitted he was more interested in surpassing the gods. Yet, Lily knew a level 9 rivaled the 4 guardians, and she wondered if the gap between them was widening. After a brief exchange, Jin urged them to head home quickly due to the monster's appearance. Later at Lily's house, she thanked Yuki and warned that the Monster King sought the lizard's corpse, but Yuki calmly assured her that there would always be a solution. She then simply thanked him again and closed the door with unexpected force. So he stood there wondering if he had somehow offended her. Unbeknownst to him, Lily worriedly wondered if she could truly keep up with his pace. Later at the slaughterhouse, Yuki killed another griffin. Yang saw this and remarked that she had yet to see anything impressive from him. Yuki ignored her, knowing that even after defeating 2 beast types, he was still far from leveling up. So he then asked about the boss-level griffin they had captured. Upon hearing this, Luke gestured for him to follow. After it, he grabbed the heavy cover and removed it from the cage. It then revealed the level 20 Griffin King with a combat power of 1,900. Yang saw Yuki's surprised expression and reminded him it was nothing he could handle. Luke also added that even if the Griffin King were on its last breath, Yuki might still fail to harm it. Encouraged by her father's words, Yang told Yuki, who's just a bean sprout, to give up, but Yuki ignored her and took out his knife. He then stepped forward and stabbed at the griffin. However, the blade shattered instantly upon impact. Seeing this, Yang burst into laughter at what she saw as blatant overconfidence. Yet he remained calm since had already realized the problem. Without the heavenly sword, he could not break the Griffin King's defense, but he sensed its breathing. So he closed his eyes and concentrated. In that moment, the rhythm of the griffin's breaths became clear to him. When one of the heads showed a slight weakness in its breathing, he quickly gathered 10 times his strength. Then he gripped the broken knife and struck directly at the weakened head. Yang was shocked by this, while Luke did not expect Yuki to master muscle-pounding breathing. Soon after, the system notified he gained 15,000 experience and reached level 10. He also obtained the Griffin battle armor from it. After that, the system asked about a job change, and Yuki resolved to make fortune from it. Afterward, Luke praised Yuki after being able to master muscle-pounding breathing. Yuki casually replied that he was a genius since he could not reveal the system. Setting that aside, he called the boss, and the boss immediately asked why. But before he could answer, the system notified him that the Griffin armor had been delivered. So he simply told the boss that he would transfer the payment and hurried off. His abrupt departure then left Luke and the others thoroughly confused. Regardless, Yuki could not contain his excitement trying on the armor. Later at home, he felt satisfied with the armor's defense and the power to fly. Therefore, he declared that for now, even the heavenly sword would struggle to pierce it. Setting that aside, he wondered what is the purpose of the village establishment token he got. Knowing that he obtained it from the boss's treasure chest, he grabs it. Then he examined it and concluded it might be vital for building his influence in the future. However, his priority today was himself since he had finally reached level 10. He quickly proceeds to summon the system to initiate a job chain. A brilliant light enveloped his entire body as the job change process began. Watching the radiant glow surrounding him, he felt a sense of awe. The system first presented the mage class, which is a long-range profession that wields powerful magic. Upon hearing about the long-range job, he immediately became interested. The warrior job emerged next and is a combat role full of battle intent. The moment Yuki saw it, he felt an instant attraction. Finally, the system introduced the Buddhist monk with a path of compassion against evil. After displaying all three options, the system prompted him to make his choice. Upon careful consideration, Yuki raised his hand toward the selection interface. When his finger made contact, the system confirmed his decision to change his job to warrior. After the job changed, his muscles and bones grew stronger. Intense pain surged through his body and forced him to grit his teeth. Golden light soon enveloped him, and streaks of lightning struck down upon his figure. After the transformation, he said the pain was harsh, yet the power made it worth enduring. Later, after the shower, he found his combat power rose to 900 and strength to 62. With his power tripled, he felt defeating the Griffin King would be easy. Setting down his drink, he realized ordinary monsters weren't enough, and the wilderness was needed for rapid growth. At that moment, the system issued a notification announcing the activation of his main quest. His main quest demanded him to have 10 million people acknowledge his martial skill, while his side quest demanded that he slay 20 beasts above level 10. After reviewing these objectives, he concluded the system was guiding him to the wilderness. With that understanding, he resolved to experience its dangers firsthand. The next day, he arrived at the Adventurers Guild in Qing City. The towering building impressed him, especially as it's the hub for wilderness missions. Inside the reception hall, crowds of people gathered around. He even heard a call for 4 wind-aligned third-rank warriors to hunt the Tiger King. Aside from that, he heard of a quest for gallbladders, and this bustle felt like past game guild. He also found out most guild members were awakened, and they were holding high status. Suddenly, a woman approached him and asked whether he needed assistance. This woman named Mari cheerfully remarked that helping others brought her the greatest joy. However, he replied he was only looking and addressed her as Auntie. But hearing him call her Auntie instantly ignited her temper. Flustered, he thought calling her Auntie was still acceptable for a second-year student, yet Mari scolded him for his insolence and declared that he was in serious trouble. Just then, a familiar voice called out his name and asked what he was doing there. When he turned around, he saw that it was Yang and Luke. Yang even waved to him cheerfully in greeting. So he immediately grasped Luke's hand and said it was good to see him. However, Luke brushed him off and told him that was enough. He then turned to Mari and asked her to give him some face and let the matter go. Mari was visibly surprised by Luke's intervention. Nevertheless, she dismissed the issue and reminded Yuki to be smarter. After she left, Yuki asked Luke whether everyone in the guild was this strange. Luke confirmed it and said the wilderness fights kept their nerves taut. Setting that aside, he asked what Yuki was doing there. Yuki replied that he intended to venture into the wilderness to experience it for himself, but Yang sneered that he'd be eaten within the hour. Hearing this, he mocked her back by claiming she was not any better. She then challenged him with her sword and he accepted, which led to a heated quarrel. Luke was enraged by their behavior, while nearby adventurers cheered them. Without wasting another moment, he dragged both of them away. Later inside a VIP room, Yuki complained that Luke had been ruthless for hitting him. However, Luke warned that, with hidden experts around, stirring conflict was foolish. After realizing the truth in his words, Yuki finally calmed down. Luke then continued to warn that while monster hunts give experience, the wilderness is truly risky. Yet hearing this made Yuki grow thrilled and press Luke for details. Seeing his enthusiasm, Luke finally agreed. He explained that the outside was perilous, especially the 4 danger zones. However, Yuki had never heard of them. So Luke said Fierce Tiger Mountain to the east was ruled by the Golden-Winged Tiger King. To the west lay the Muddy Marsh, ruled by the Double-Headed Dragon. To the south stretched the Flower Sea under the Flower Demon. Finally, 300 miles out, Mount Lu housed the Ghost King. These were the 4 zones surrounding Qing City with countless hidden dangers beyond. However, Yuki's attention shifted to the experience he could earn from them. Luke noticed Yuki's thrill expression and was puzzled by it. Nevertheless, he said battling scattered beasts outside was enough without venturing far. Yuki then assured him he knew what he was doing, but he needed to leave quickly. Later at Qing City's defensive wall, a guard barred Yuki from the restricted zone. He also questioned if Yuki had a pass and why he was sneaking out. Unable to provide an answer, Yuki pointed toward the sky and shouted about flying monsters. The soldier instinctively turned around to look but found nothing there. When he turned back, Yuki had also already disappeared, so he was confused why Yuki sought danger despite seeming fine. Later in Jixia town, rat monsters were running amok among the ruins. Upon seeing this, Yuki noted the level 5 rat proved the outside was a wasteland. He then proceeded to take out his weapon, which is the Wind Thunder Spear that possessed 350 attack power. After equipping it, he leapt into the air. Then he decided to test his strength on the giant rat. With a single strike, he killed it instantly and gained 3 experience points. Though he sneered at the meager reward, this was still the monster hunting life he had long desired. As he stood there, the surrounding rats began to stir. He quickly sensed movement and turned toward the source. A horde of rats poured out from a nearby building. One of them let out a sharp roar as a signal, and the entire swarm rushed toward him at once. But he was unfazed and decided to try his new technique. As the rats closed in, he raised his spear and activated his warrior skill. The Wind Thunder Spear became enveloped in surging spiritual power. The rats hesitated for a brief moment upon sensing the overwhelming force, but his attack swept through the area and engulfed the swarm. When the dust settled, Yuki stood amid the corpses as he received constant experience points. As the sun set beyond the forest, Yuki built a fire and began roasting the rats he had hunted. Once they were cooked, he gnawed on the meat without hesitation. One after another, he ate his fill, then tossed the strip bones aside. By the time he finished, he remarked that fresh monster meat was surprisingly tender. However, his expression soon turned serious as he sensed a powerful presence approaching. He abruptly turned around to check who it was. To his surprise, a winged tiger was charging straight at him. So he hurriedly seized his spear and leapt into the air while maneuvering behind the golden winged tiger. Following that, a crack of lightning split through the forest as his attack descended. After defeating it, he scoffed at its low combat power, yet he wondered how it tasted. He then questioned what kind of tiger it was since such beasts rarely live together. Before he could finish his thoughts, he realized more tigers had emerged. One of them stepped forward and growled with bloodshot eyes. Yuki was stunned upon seeing this. So without wasting another second, he turned and began running, yet he was still chased by winged tigers, so he questioned their unusual unity. Realizing that he would eventually be caught if this continued, he decided to use his skill. So he abruptly stopped running, and he activated his power. The griffin battle armor materialized around his body, and the brilliant light blinded the tigers. Fortunately, the armor gave him flight, and this saved him from being trapped. However, he finally admitted the wilderness's peril and questioned the tiger's thrill in chasing him. But now he declared that it was his turn. He then proceeded to unleash his dragon and phoenix slash. A tremendous surge of power tore through and engulfed the tigers. One after another, they collapsed and fell from the air. The system notifications flooded Yahello as he gained massive amounts of experience from their corpses. Yuki then noted each tiger gave 2,000 experiences and thought a dozen more would level him up. But suddenly, a wave of dizziness struck him, and his vision began to blur. As he struggled to stand, he realized that Dragon Phoenix Slash was too draining for constant use. He also admitted he wasn't seasoned and needed to restore mana. At the same time, he saw the tiger's hunt and retreat tactic that showed their intelligence. Later, deeper in the forest, a deer was strolling casually when a golden-winged tiger suddenly appeared and lunged at it. At that very moment, Yuki's spear shot forward. It struck the tiger's body and pinned it against a nearby boulder. Afterward, Yuki walked toward the deer's body, only to find that the bait was already dead, and this made things more troublesome for him. Later, near a cliff, he discovered several winged tigers gathered together. He admitted the beasts were too cunning, though just a handful more kills would level him up. With that in mind, he decided to move on and search for other ferocious monsters. After some time, he finally found a solitary tiger and marked it for leveling. Thinking about the experience points he would gain, he flew toward it excitedly. Yet he realized upon arrival that the situation was not what he thought. Standing before him was the level 25 Tiger King. At that moment, the massive beast slowly awakened and rose to its full height, so he could hardly believe the creature's size since it's greater than a whale. But the tiger's gaze suddenly fixed directly on him, so began to wonder nervously whether it had already detected his presence. The Tiger King advanced with an ominous aura surrounding it. It also gathered energy within its mouth as it prepared an attack. Without hesitation, it released a powerful energy ball toward Yuki. Yuki responded by quickly forming a shield barrier in an attempt to block the attack, but the force still broke through and hit him. Overwhelmed by the impact, he was sent flying into the air. The Tiger King who saw this watched him coldly, and its expression filled with disdain. Nearby, several deer were grazing peacefully in a field. When they suddenly saw Yuki fall from the sky, they froze in confusion. Meanwhile, Yuki regained his footing and conceded the Tiger King's terrifying might. But before he could recover, another sound echoed through the forest. He turned sharply and saw yet another horde of beasts rushing toward him. Anxiety gripped Yuki as he feared his luck had ended and he'd be trampled. Setting that aside, he quickly took out his spear and launched into action. He used vertical chop followed by a horizontal sweep against the beast. The immense force of his attacks swept through them, bringing the chaotic situation to an end. After defeating the monsters, he earned 1,000 experience and some gold. In addition, the system notified him that he had reached level 11. Upon hearing this, he drove his spear into the ground and collapsed in relief, yet admitted the bulls were far too many. So this made him suspect a hidden agreement between the government and the Monster King. While stretching, he also considered the world's danger and thought of reaching level 12 before heading back. Yuki then eyed the nourishing beasts and questioned if his inventory could hold them. While on it, he acknowledged the need to sharpen his combat skills after struggling against weaker foes. But before he could continue his thoughts, he heard voices drifting through the forest. He then spotted a distant group of bulls and became intrigued. At that moment, Yang and her team were surrounded by the herd. Their condition was already dire from earlier battles. Suddenly, one of the bulls charged forward. Yang hurriedly raised her sword to block the attack. At the same time, she urged her father to finish quickly. Not far away, the horned bull king stood with one ear severed, and the injury was inflicted by none other than Luke. Hearing Yang's voice, he told her to endure a bit longer while he finished the monster. However, the bull king was far from defeated. It seized a moment of Luke's distraction and suddenly turned to flee. Luke shouted for it to stop, but he realized prolonged battle could doom them all. Meanwhile, Yang's sword was knocked from her grasp and sent flying across the ground. Her arm was also wounded after she failed to defend. When she forced her eyes open, she saw the enraged bull charging straight at her. Luke urgently shouted for her to move, yet he knew it might already be too late. Yang knew this, but she's already exhausted and could only apologize to him. However, the bull before her was suddenly struck by thunder. As it collapsed, Yuki appeared and mocked Yang for not being able to handle it. Hearing his voice, she was surprised and called him the perverted bean sprout. He then immediately clarified that he was not a pervert and asked how they had ended up surrounded. Before she could answer, Luke suddenly appeared. He explains he wants to forge Yang a better weapon, yet his misstep cost him dearly. Hearing this, Yuki was surprised that Luke had actually made such a mistake. However, a blade was suddenly pointed at his neck. Luke warned him to watch his words, and he quickly apologized. Meanwhile, the other two men called out to Luke, saying they could not hold on much longer. Luke turned his attention back to the Bull King, which is now too cowed to resist. Yet as time passed, more bulls continued to gather. Yang suddenly suggested that they fight their way out, but he replied that with so many enemies, he could not eliminate them all. Still, Yang insisted she did not care and even declared that she wanted to eat roast beef. However, Luke could only apologize and admitted that he was already running out of stamina. Unexpectedly, Yuki urged him to endure 3 seconds, and Luke agreed, but he's puzzled by the plan. Yuki then moved immediately while saying there was no time to explain. Seeing this, Luke could not help but scold him, but he still stepped forward and used his cyclone blade to block the incoming bulls. As he fought, he cautioned Yuki that using the skill would drain him and leave their lives in Yuki's hands. Yuki reassured him not to worry since he had not lived enough to die yet. After that, he resolved to seize the Bull King in order to stop the other bulls. He quickly rushed toward the Bull King's back and unleashed a punch with 10 times his normal power. The impact was so immense that the Bull King's head was smashed into the ground. Watching this, both Yang and Luke were shocked by the display of his strength. However, Yuki did not stop there, and he activated his Dragon Phoenix Slash. The Bull King felt immense pressure as the dragon and phoenix descended upon him. Tried to flee, but they chased it relentlessly. In a flash, the dragon and phoenix merged and struck the Bull King down. As the Bull King's body fell lifeless to the ground, Yuki finally declared that it was over. After the Bull King was decapitated, the remaining bulls began to flee in panic. The bald man then happily called out his other companion, who immediately rushed over. The two embraced and joyfully declared that they had survived. However, Luke felt ashamed and proposed abandoning them, to which Yang agreed. Suddenly, he noticed Yuki waving, and he replied that he owed him this time. but Yuki insisted there was no need since they knew each other so well. Irritated by Yuki's audacity, Luke felt tempted to teach him a lesson, but Yuki suddenly requested the monster's body since it would strengthen him. Hearing this, he told him to wait a moment. This quickly made Yuki ask if there was something else. He then said Yuki's raw power lacked finesse and directed him to the Luo mountain town blacksmith. There, he would teach him the method he used to harness strength properly. Hearing this made Yuki happily agree and said he would definitely go. However, Yang urged him to change before he embarrassed himself and he complied. Later in Luo mountain town, Yuki arrived at a shop. Upon seeing that it was Luke's blacksmith shop, he knew he had come to the right place. Suddenly, Yang called out to him saying she had thought he would not be able to find it, but she noticed his expression and asked if he was surprised by her combat suit. She then introduced their weapons and proudly said they were not bad. However, he remarked Luke's capability made it natural, then asked why she was showing off. Furious at his response, she asked if he wanted to fight. Yuki accepted without fear, prompting her to declare his doom. At that moment, Luke stormed in and demanded why they fought every time. He even hit them on the head and told them to behave. Still, both of them insisted it was not their fault and began pointing at each other. Luke then finally ordered them to stop and announced that he would forge a new weapon for Yang. Soon after, he began demonstrating a special method of harnessing power and told them to watch. As he raised his hammer toward the horn, he reminded Yuki to pay close attention. Then he struck the horn with immense force. Yuki was astounded that such a short motion held overwhelming power. He realized that this technique was extraordinary and decided to memorize it carefully. However, the system notified him that it had detected Luke's power manipulation. He then achieved elementary mastery and was finally able to harness his strength. Though surprised by this, he questioned if reaching 1,000 points was necessary before advancing. Suddenly, Yang noticed him staring intently and asked whether he had learned it. He confidently replied that he had since he was a genius, but his arrogance immediately infuriated her, and she felt the urge to punch him. Later that night, the sound of metal being struck echoed outside the shop. Inside, Luke hammered the horn one final time with immense force. Not long after the sword was finally forged. Seeing this, Yang felt delighted that her heavenly bull sword was complete. However, a dark aura suddenly appeared around it when she reached out to take it. Luke noticed this and quickly warned her to be careful. The sword began to move on its own and levitated into the air. It then turned toward Yang and shot straight at her. She quickly dodged, but the blade still grazed her cheek. In midair, the sword suddenly split into two, then it fell to the ground with a sharp clang. After witnessing this, Yuki asked what had happened. Luke explained that it resisted because of lingering willpower, which he failed to eliminate. With that, he turned to Yang and apologized for destroying her weapon, but she dismissed it and claimed she could qualify to the Martial Arts Institute regardless of her weapon. He then also apologized to Yuki since his plan to show him the right technique hadn't worked out. But Yuki reassured him that it was alright since he had already learned it. Luke attempted to continue explaining, but he stopped when he heard Yuki's response. Surprised by this, he asked whether he had truly mastered it already. Yuki quickly picked up a hammer and a sword nearby. Then he asked Luke to check whether there were any flaws in his technique. After saying that, he placed the sword down and prepared himself. When he brought the hammer down onto the blade, the sword was cleanly cut into 4 pieces. Watching this, Luke noticed Yuki's force control had changed entirely. He also grasped the technique in one try, which Luke found terrifyingly impressive. Meanwhile, Yuki offered Yang to test his weapon, and she quickly asked if he'd give her the spear. But he said that the spear did not suit her temperament. So instead, he produced the Heaven's Edge sword with over 60 strength. He also told her the weapon was a family treasure, and she eagerly agreed to take it. But she wondered about the sword's origin, and he explained he could summon items remotely. She then left, saying they depend on him for supplies, but Yuki chose not to disclose his system. Later, they opened the shop and had Yang stand before a training dummy. With her new sword in hand, she closed her eyes and focused all her strength while Luke and Yuki watched nearby. When she opened her eyes again, they were filled with determination. She stepped forward and slashed the wooden log in front of her. The blade cut through it and split it cleanly into 2. Seeing this, she could not help but marvel at how sharp the sword was. Luke also agreed the cut was sharp and exact like a treasured weapon. Yuki heard this and lightly patted Luke, saying he was being too polite again. While Yuki thought it's worth it since he gained the power control skill, Luke recognized his reckless brilliance. Setting that aside, Yuki said he'd return ahead since the weapon matter was settled. However, Luke asked him to wait, which made him wonder if there was something else. Luke then asked whether he had ever considered joining the Martial Arts Institute. The next day back in the city, Yuki felt weary from 2 days without sleep. As he walked, thought of the Institute's training system and the evaluation tomorrow. But while he was lost in thought, a book suddenly flew through the air and struck him directly in the face. Lily then appeared and scolded him for not responding and for skipping lessons. She also asked whether he had ever considered her position as class monitor. He quickly handed back her notebook while saying he'd been out in the wild without reception, but she wondered if he was capable of surviving the wilderness by himself. He then confidently confirmed that he was, and even claimed that he had killed many monsters. However, she ignored his boast, so he asked if she wanted to taste the ingredients he had brought back. Just as she agreed and he asked what she wanted to eat, a car suddenly sped toward them. Yuki immediately noticed the danger and quickly pulled her aside to avoid being hit. After escaping the vehicle, the driver yelled, but Yuki was busy noticing something soft in his grasp. When he looked down, he discovered that he had accidentally touched Lily's front. Lily's face then turned red with fury as she loudly called him a bastard. Later at home, the table was once again filled with steaming hot pot. But Yuki could only smile with a clear handprint still visible on his face. Across from him, Lily remained visibly angry, so he apologized by offering her the rare wilderness beef. Still, she said beef alone wouldn't earn her forgiveness, and he accepted that. However, when she finally tasted the beef, she suddenly paused. The flavor was unexpectedly rich and tender to her. Even so, she called it barely above average, and Luke encouraged her to eat more. Setting that aside, he informed her that he might not be attending school regularly in the future. She was immediately surprised and asked why. He explained that he planned to apply to the Martial Arts Institute. She finally admitted his gift was well suited as a martial artist. Still, she encouraged him to try awakening properly instead of giving up early. After the meal, she offered to arrange his leave but insisted he attend classes when possible, and he accepted. But just as she was about to reach the door, he asked her to wait for a moment. She quickly turned around, wondering why he had called her. However, she only heard him say thank you. Furious by this, she called him an idiot and this confused him. But she quickly slammed the before leaving, so he was left standing there, confused about what he had said wrong. He eventually thought girls were a hassle and chose to rest before tomorrow's institute visit. The following morning at the Martial Arts Institute, many candidates had already gathered. Among them was Yang, who was casually drinking in a corner. Yuki quickly noticed her and greeted her while asking where Luke was. She replied that her father had gone ahead to inspect the venue and had asked her to wait for Yuki. Yuki acknowledged Luke's thoughtfulness, then asked how to take part in the test. She told him to register first at reception and wait for his name, but he also observed the number of participants and wondered what the assessment entailed. She explained the assessment involves strength, speed, and combat. After hearing this, he reminded her not to get eliminated. She then angrily slammed down her drink and stepped closer to him, which made him ask why she was smiling so ominously. She claimed that his sword gave her courage, but he wondered why she spoke that way. At that moment, the receptionist summoned Yang to the examination hall. So she finally dropped the teasing and told him to pay attention to learn the test, especially what truly awaited them at the end. Later, inside the examination hall, Yang began her test. She stood in the arena facing a massive rock golem. The golem did not hesitate and immediately charged toward her. Anticipating its movement, she gripped her sword firmly, and with a swift, precise slash, her blade cut cleanly through the golem's body. The spectators were then astonished by how effortlessly she defeated it. Following that, the referee confirmed the golem was immobile and declared Yang successful. As she walked back toward her father, Luke remarked that disabling the golem was enough, but Yuki stepped in and praised Yang for fighting well. In response, she brushed off his words and asked how he did in the preliminaries. Rather than answering directly, he told her to guess. She then grew angry at his smug look and threatened him with her sword. After some time, Yuki's name was finally called, and he entered the arena calmly. Then he urged the fight to begin and admitted he'd never face an awakener. Hearing this, Yang grew worried and quickly turned to her father. But he assured her that there was no need to worry since Yuki was clearly hiding more strength. Not long after, the referee signaled for the test to begin. Yuki's opponent then reminded him to be careful. The arena floor quaked following this when he activated his ability and raised rocks into the air. The floating stones were also drawn into a swirling tornado around him. The powerful winds spread outward, forcing even the spectators to shield themselves. As the storm calmed, the crowd opened their eyes in shock. The sight of the towering golem led them to question if the Institute was targeting Yuki. Suddenly, the Awakener said his control over Gaia had reached its limit and hoped Yuki would prove herself. Meanwhile, the referee reviewed Yuki's stats, including how he defeated the Faceless Man. He then judged Yuki's strength as second rank level and pondered if it was innate genius. On the other hand, Yuki stood calmly as the towering golem launched its attack. With a swift movement, he narrowly avoided its heavy punch. But reflecting on Gaia's blessing, he thought Awakener's abilities were difficult to counter. Yet in the midst of his thoughts, he failed to notice. The golem seized him firmly. Gasps then filled the place as the giant moved with surprising agility. Across the arena, his opponent mocked Yuki's claim of being a genius, but he stopped when he noticed something. He witnessed Yuki surging with power, and the force of it tore apart his clothes. With a burst of strength, he shattered the golem's hand that had been imprisoning him. Observing this, the referee noticed Yuki's power surging and realized he had more hidden strength. Meanwhile, the golem let out a roar of pain as its arm crumbled, yet the broken stones suddenly lifted into the air before reconnecting seamlessly to its body. The Awakener then calmly explained that the golem's ability to regenerate nullified Yuki's approach. On the other hand, Yuki safely landed near the weapon rack. He looked at it while reflecting that even tenfold strength hadn't been enough to finish the golem, so he no longer hesitated and seized a spear to charge forward once more. The golem saw this and responded by preparing another crushing punch. Yuki swiftly evaded the strike and allowed it to slam into the ground instead. Seizing the opportunity, he ran up along the golem's extended arm. At the perfect moment, he unleashed his Dragon Phoenix Slash. The audience watching this were stunned after seeing a dragon and phoenix appeared. At that moment, the golem was cleaved apart by Yuki's sheer power. And after successfully doing this, he asked the referee whether he had passed the test. Meanwhile, inside a room littered with empty bottles, a man sat leisurely with another bottle in hand. After finishing it, he casually asked for another. The man was no other than Chun, the chief of the Martial Arts Institute headquarters. His secretary then entered and firmly told him that he could not continue drinking, but he insisted that as a fifth-rank warrior, he would not get drunk so easily. In response, she placed a thick stack of documents heavily onto the desk. She said she understood the Institute's shortage of talent, and this made the reports essential. She even stepped closer and left him with no room to argue. So Chun reluctantly picked up the documents and began reading. As his eyes scanned the contents, he was in visible shock. Back inside the Institute, Yuki received his second-rank warrior emblem. He casually played it and boasted that he had passed without much effort. However, his smug expression made Yang clench her fists since she had the urge to strike him. Meanwhile, Luke stated evenly that Yuki's strength equaled his own. But hearing this made Yuki feel slightly embarrassed. Suddenly, he noticed his phone ringing from an incoming call, so he quickly answered it. However, he ended up getting scolded by Lily for skipping class all day. He then began explaining his situation while Yang behind him silently observed the exchange. She turned to her father and quietly asked whether Yuki was truly that strong. Luke struggled to console her since prodigies would always appear. But before he could respond properly, she suddenly raised her sword. Then she declared that she would surpass Yuki once again. The next day at Tiger Mountain, several winged tigers were feasting on a deer carcass, but an unfamiliar sound disturbed them. In the next instant, a bolt of immense thunder descended upon them. Yuki appeared and found that control and technique mattered more than sheer force. The system's congratulatory notice for level 13 also made him smile with pride. However, it quickly faded as a series of howls echoed behind him. Looking up, he saw a large group of winged tigers charging toward him. He gripped his spear and met them head-on, but their numbers were overwhelming. It also struck him as strange that the tigers refused to retreat even after losses. When one of them closed the distance, he suddenly understood. He realized they were not attacking recklessly, but they were buying time. At that moment, the winged Tiger King had arrived. A fierce growl echoed across the forest, and it was impossible to ignore even from a great distance. Yuki then realized the Tiger King was enraged by losses and had set him up. Before he could think further, the Tiger King spread its wings and flew straight toward him. He knew he was still no match for it and that he had to retreat at once. So he activated his armor and solitary movement technique to escape. However, he saw that the Tiger King's speed was overwhelming and pursuit was inevitable. Just as he considered this, the Tiger King unleashed a compressed shockwave from its mouth. He was caught off guard and failed to evade, so the attack struck his side directly and pain shot through his body. He still narrowly avoided it, though the blast clipped him before hitting the mountain. Glancing at it, he realized the earlier fight hadn't shown the cannon's full destructive force. Since even just a graze caused such damage, and he can't confront it head-on, so he forced himself to stay calm and scanned his surroundings. After a brief moment of thought, a plan formed in his mind. He then adjusted his direction and flew toward a swamp in the distance. After that, he called and pointed at the Tiger King. Then he challenged it to come over to him. The Tiger King was left confused by his actions, yet the provocation felt like mockery, and it furiously charged toward him. Seeing that it had taken the bait, Yuki decided to have it chase him, so he descended rapidly toward the swamp. At the last second, he plunged straight into the murky waters below. The Tiger King abruptly halted midair and was wary of the unfamiliar terrain. Moments later, bubbles began rising from the swamp's surface. The water churned violently before the double-headed dragon, who's the tyrant of the muddy marsh, appeared. While the air between them grew tense, Yuki slipped out from another part of the swamp. As he wiped the mud away, he reflected that the dragon would never allow another ruler in their territory. After that, he took out a large health potion and drank it in one motion. The potion's remarkable effect quickly healed his arm before his eyes. After that, he lifted his gaze to the sky. He watched as the dragon and the Tiger King clashed violently. Though they are evenly matched for now, Yuki intended to teach the tiger the cost of deceiving him. Later, deep in the forest, a group of winged tigers feasted on deer carcasses. They were busy tearing at flesh when one of them sensed something unusual. However, it was already too late, and a flash of light tore through the trees, followed by a violent explosion that engulfed their position. When the dust settled, Yuki stood before them, casually calling them kittens. While he continuously gained from the fallen beasts, one of the tigers stared at him in shock, its gaze fixed on the dragon's silhouette that loomed behind him. At the same time, Yuki calmly remarked that it had been a long time since they last met. Fear spread through the remaining tigers, and they immediately turned to flee. Seeing this, he warned them not to even think about escaping in front of him. He then unleashed a powerful slash in their direction. The strike tore through the forest and carving a deep path. Moments later, the battlefield was littered with corpses as the system rewarded him. He then murmured that 199 tigers had paid the price, but wished for one more to make it even. As if on cue, the sound of a tree snapping echoed nearby. Yuki turned his head and realized that the 200th had finally arrived. Behind him stood a level 20 tiger general and the guardian of the clan. He then remarked that the beast had no obligations left after its clan's fall. Nevertheless, the tiger general roared and charged toward him without hesitation. He then leaped lightly from his position, evading the attack and catching the beast off guard. While on it, he recognized the opening, so he swung his spear decisively. The blade flashed, and in a single clean strike, he beheaded the tiger general. With this, he stated that the 200th kill had finally balanced the debt he felt toward the old tiger. Suddenly, the system congratulated him in the hidden quest, Nemesis of the Tiger Clan, granting him their unique skill. With Tiger Leap in hand, he believed his reckoning with the Tiger King was imminent. Setting that aside, he turned to the tiger corpses scattered around and considered their value. But the thought that he was no longer poor filled him with excitement. After a while, the Tiger King returned with the head of the double-headed dragon. Yet the moment its gaze fell upon the ground, its eyes turned blood red before it lay the lifeless bodies of its entire clan. A thunderous roar then quickly erupted from its throat. Its furious cry even left the people nearby asking who had angered it enough to descend. Panic spread quickly, and they fled at once. However, the Tiger King opened its mouth and unleashed a devastating attack. The blast struck the surrounding mountains and caused it to crumble. Later that night, Yuki pondered his new wealth and chose to purchase 2 phones. But passing the slaughterhouse, he saw the lights and questioned Boss Quinn's late work. He decided to step inside and excitedly announced that he had goods to sell. But instead of a greeting, a knife suddenly flew toward him. He reacted instantly and bent down to dodge it. A little girl stepped forward and demanded to know who he was and why he had entered. Instead of replying, he demanded her apology, which she flatly denied. So he warned that mischief needed discipline, but he froze as a dark aura pressed in. Only then did he realize that several experts were present, and they all seemed hostile. At that moment, Quen finally emerged and recognized Yuki. Almost instantly, the oppressive stares disappeared, which left Yuki confused. His attention then turned to Quen, who said the girl was his mischievous daughter, Yuna. After hearing her father's connection to Yuki, Yuna withdrew and he let her go. He then apologized for her behavior and asked Yuki what brought him there so late. Yuki stated he possessed 30 golden-winged tiger corpses, leaving Quen astonished. Yet their familiarity led Quen to fix the price at 320,000 per each. He quickly accepted at once and thanked Quen, who dismissed the need for courtesy. Later, while checking his card, Yuki wondered if Quen had secrets since he didn't question him. The gathered experts also caught his attention, yet Quen's discretion made him hold back. So he decided to leave in the end, thinking that Quen did not seem like a bad person. Meanwhile, inside the slaughterhouse, Quen questioned the experts about whether they had confirmed everything. One reported it was accurate, but the Monster King's body had become a lure for other beasts. After learning this, Quen instructed them to suppress it as he thought awakened ones were really arrogant. The next day, outside Yuki's apartment, Chun arrived with another man. The man asked if he was certain this was the place, and he calmly confirmed it. He added that he had already investigated all the details about Yuki. Inside apartment, the dining table was once again filled with food. Yuki happily chatted and invited Lily over to eat. At that moment, the system notified him that the NPC exploration function had been activated, but he was irritated that it activated late as his curiosity about Quen had already passed. Still, he saw it as a valuable support ability if used wisely. Soon, he heard a knock at the door and assumed Lily had arrived, so he opened it and casually remarked on her speed. However, his expression froze when he saw two unfamiliar men instead. He then immediately asked who they were. Chun called him by name and praised his unusual taste, so he questioned how he knew him. Chun said they'd watched him since his martial arts display and were institute representatives. Meanwhile, the man beside Chun caught the fragrance of tiger dishes, so he approached it and he remarked that such ingredients were rare, but Yuki was stunned. He then asked if Yuki slew them all, to which he confirmed and urged them to leave. Yet he only told him to be patient, leading Yuki to question his purpose. Before he could react, suddenly felt his body move against his will. An invisible force compelled him to sit down in a chair. Shocked by this, he recognized that the man's force left him no chance to respond. Moments later, he cleaned the empty bowls, though the meal had been for Lily and him. Suddenly, Chun complimented the dishes and thought Yuki could thrive opening a restaurant. Yuki took advantage of the situation and demanded 1 million as payment for the meal. He also protested that they barged in and ate without asking. Realizing this, Chun introduced himself and Wes, who is Jiang District Hall's head. Upon hearing Wes's title, Yuki realized he is an extraordinary person. Still, he asked what had brought the two of them here. Wes then lauded Yuki's performance and offered to make him his disciple at the institute. Chun also remarked with envy that the headmaster had never done this before. However, he only expressed gratitude and insisted on joining the awakening ceremony. In response, Wes pointed out that he was already aware his awakening value was 0. So his expression gradually turned grim as he released his power and asked if he ignored the might of a martial artist. In that instant, Yuki felt an overwhelming aura press down on him. Yet when he looked at Wes, he recalled his second chance at life and resolved not to surrender. Wes, on the other hand, waited for his answer. So he replied that success and awakening would not sway him from being a martial artist. Wes's brows furrowed slightly at this response, but he continued to insist that failing to try would mean he wasn't truly strong. Unexpectedly, Chen's sudden clapping broke the situation. He even noted Yuki's rare composure under the headmaster's aura. Wes also remarked that Yuki's exceptional state of mind made him truly intriguing. So as he walked past, he promised not to hinder his choice and left the institute open to him. Before leaving, he promised to send his insights the next day, but he must study hard or else he would personally be displeased. Later outside, Chun noted West's rare generosity since he seldom gave advice. West replied that Chen's talent had already reached its limit at the 5th rank. However, Yuki had shown him a glimmer of hope, so he quietly hoped that Yuki would one day surpass that man. Meanwhile, Yuki felt somewhat depressed. Having missed out on his own food, he asked Lily when she became such a big eater. She replied innocently that she did not know and that it was his fault for not eating sooner. She also added that she was still growing, so it was natural for her appetite to increase. He then glanced at her and agreed that she was indeed growing. Setting that aside, she tells him about the city's unrest and tells him not to leave. Upon knowing this, he quickly asked what was happening. She revealed that notable figures had come, and this confirmed their suspicions. However, he thought it was normal since they had already speculated about it. Yet she suddenly slammed the table, saying he did not understand anything. She said she knew of his training, yet she cautioned him against leaving amid rising danger. Listening to her earnest plea, he fell silent. Regardless, he reassured her that he knew what he was doing, but her expression darkened upon hearing this. Unable to change his mind, she simply asked him to stay safe since he was her friend. After that, she decided to leave first. Watching her depart, he remained quiet. He silently thanked her, but he would not wait helplessly for calamity. The next morning, he woke up early. He then noticed his phone notified him of a new email. When he checked it, he noted Wes's efficiency befitting a 6th-rank martial artist. However, before he could examine it carefully, something unusual happened. A violent storm suddenly surrounded him, and he was swallowed within it. Moments later, he was dropped onto solid ground. As he looked around, he wondered where he was since the air was freezing. Suddenly, someone tossed a set of clothes toward him and urged him to put them on. As he changed, he thought it might be a virtual space, but the icy sensation made it hard to believe. At that moment, he noticed Wes standing not far away facing a massive beast, so he became curious and wondered what it was. The system promptly informed him that it was a sub-monster known as the Polar Bear King. His sight fell next on Wes's spear like his, and he recognized the chance to learn. Suddenly, the Polar Bear King let out a deafening growl. Wes merely chuckled calmly and activated a skill through his spear. In the next instant, he lunged forward at full speed. The polar bear charged as well, and the two figures collided violently in a fierce clash. Wes quickly realized the beast's power was less daunting than it seemed. However, the bear suddenly raised its paw and shattered the ground with tremendous force. By then, he had already leapt into the air and coldly asked whether it wished to perish together with him. He then lifted his spear high and dark clouds gathered above. Bolts of lightning began to form and descended directly onto his weapon. With a decisive motion, he aimed at the bear and unleashed his thunder wave. The force was devastating and crushed the ground beneath, while the polar bear, on the other hand, was pierced straight through one eye. But after West landed on the ground, the polar bear remained alive and its fury intensified. Seeing this, he finally activated his secret technique called 8 shadow movement. In an instant, 8 shadowy figures split from his body and surrounded the beast. Yuki watched in astonishment as Wes appeared to divide into 8 distinct shadows. Following that, each clone raised a spear simultaneously. And in the next moment, all of them struck at different parts of the polar bear's body. After the attack concluded, Wes said he would let it live, but next offense would mean its head. His laughter echoed across the place after, as Yuki observed from a distance. Suddenly, the vortex above began to open once more. Yuki's startled shout reverberated as the swirling portal connected directly to his room. He was abruptly expelled from the space and thrown back inside. The lingering pain then reminded him how fearsome an advanced martial artist's strength could be. However, he stopped thinking when he saw a faint glow surrounding him. While he was still confused, the system declared his success in learning Thunder Wave and 8 shadow movement.